The discovery in the frozen wasteland. The blizzard hit mining station Omega-7 without warning, turning the already hostile landscape into a frozen nightmare. Jake Morrison pulled his thermal coat tighter as he checked the perimeter sensors. Last time, before the storm made visibility impossible. The howling wind carried ice crystals that cut like tiny knives, and the temperature had dropped to -40 degrees. Jake was used to the cold. 3 years working the outer rim mining operations had taught him to respect the brutal environment of Kepler 442b. But as he trudged through the knee-deep snow toward the equipment shed, something caught his eye. A dark shape huddled against the outer fence, barely visible through the swirling white. His first thought was that some equipment had blown loose, but as he got closer, he realized with shock that it was alive. The figure was small, humanoid, but clearly not human. Delicate features, pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer even in the dim light, and what looked like gill slits along the neck. The being wore only thin, tattered clothing completely inadequate for the killing cold. Jake dropped to his knees beside the motionless form. The alien's breathing was so shallow, he almost missed it. Her skin felt like ice, and frost had formed on her eyelashes. Without hesitation, Jake scooped her up in his arms. She weighed almost nothing, like holding a bird. Made of glass and starlight. Racing back to the station, Jake's mind reeled. First contact protocols demanded he notify the Colonial Authority immediately, but the nearest comm relay was down due to the storm. More importantly, this being would be dead long before any official response arrived. She needed warmth and medical attention now. Inside the station's medical bay, Jake worked frantically to raise her body temperature. The diagnostic scanner showed readings unlike anything in the human medical database. Her heart had 4 chambers instead of 3. Her blood contained traces of liquid methane, and her bone density was half that of a human. Yet somehow, impossibly, she was still alive. As Jake applied thermal blankets and administered 4 fluids. He found himself talking to her unconscious form. "Come on, don't give up on me. You made it this far." Her alien features were strangely beautiful, with high cheekbones and silver hair that seemed to catch light even in the sterile medical bay. Hours passed. Jake monitored her vital signs, adjusted the heater, and waited. The storm raged outside, cutting off all communication with the outside world. He was alone with this mysterious being, responsible for a life form that shouldn't exist according to everything humanity knew about this sector. Finally, her eyes fluttered open. They were the color of deep ocean water, with pupils that contracted sharply in the artificial light. She looked at Jake with confusion, and what might have been fear. When she tried to speak, only a whisper emerged, in a language like singing. Jake held up his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "Easy there. You're safe. I'm Jake. I found you outside." He pointed to himself and spoke slowly, hoping she might understand some basic concepts. The alien's gaze moved around the medical bay, taking in the equipment, the warm lights, the thermal blankets covering her. Then she looked back at Jake, and something changed in her expression. The fear remained, but it was joined by something else. Wonder, perhaps, or gratitude. Breaking through the language barrier, the alien's recovery was nothing short of miraculous. Within 6 hours, her body temperature had stabilized, and the dangerous blue tinge had left her skin. Jake had set up a temporary bed in the medical bay, where she could rest while he tried to figure out what to do next. The storm outside showed no signs of letting up, giving him time to observe this incredible being. Her name, as far as Jake could determine, was something like Zephyra. She repeated the melodic sound whenever he pointed to her, though the way she pronounced it made it sound like music itself. In return, she seemed to understand that his name was Jake, though she pronounced it with a soft whistle at the end that made it sound almost ethereal. Communication came slowly, built on gestures and simple words. Jake would point to objects around the station, saying their names clearly: water, light, food. Zephyra was an incredibly quick learner, repeating the words with an accent that made even mundane things sound like poetry. Her voice had an unusual quality, as if she were speaking and singing simultaneously. The breakthrough came when Jake was trying to explain why he had helped her. He drew simple pictures on a tablet: a figure lying in snow, another figure helping, both figures warm and safe inside. Zephyra studied the drawings intensely, then took the stylus from his hand. Her artwork was extraordinary, flowing lines that seemed to capture emotion as much as form. She drew her own story in return. Figures with features like hers, but cold and distant. A scene of rejection, of being cast out. Then darkness, cold, and finally Jake's figure offering warmth. When she finished, she looked at him with those ocean-deep eyes and spoke a single word that needed no translation: why? Jake thought for a long moment. How do you explain basic human decency to someone whose own people had abandoned her? Because, he said slowly, everyone deserves kindness. He drew a heart on the tablet, then pointed to himself, to her, to the drawing of them helping each other. Zephyra traced the heart with one slender finger. Then she drew her own symbol beside it, something like a spiral galaxy with rays of light emanating from the center. She pointed to Jake, then to herself, then to the symbol. Whatever it meant in her culture, it seemed to represent the same concept. As the days passed, their communication improved rapidly. Zephyra had an incredible aptitude for learning human language, and Jake found himself picking up some of her melodic words in return. She told him, in broken but increasingly clear English, about her people. The Etherians were an ancient race, highly evolved, but also highly rigid in their thinking. They valued perfection, order, and emotional control above all else. Zephyra had been born different, with what they considered genetic flaws, emotions that ran too deep, and a curiosity about other species that was seen as dangerous contamination. They say I am broken, she explained, her voice carrying pain. That transcended language barriers. Too much feeling, too much wonder, not pure Etherian. Her people had cast her out onto this frozen world as a form of exile, expecting the harsh environment to correct their perceived mistake by ending her life. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. How could any species abandon one of their own too? Die alone? You're not broken, he said firmly. You're beautiful exactly as you are. The words came out more intensely than he had intended, and Zephyra looked surprised by his vehemence. She reached out tentatively and touched his hand. Her skin was still cool, but no longer the dangerous ice cold of hypothermia. Jake Morrison, she said, pronouncing his full name with careful precision. You are kind. Your species, all like you? Jake laughed, a sound that made her eyes widen. With curiosity. No, not all. Humans can be cruel too. But many of us believe that differences make us stronger, not weaker. He squeezed her hand gently. Where I come from, we have a saying, it takes all kinds to make a world. The storm finally broke on the fourth day, revealing a landscape transformed by massive snowdrifts and crystalline ice formations. Jake knew that communications would be restored soon, and with them would come questions he wasn't ready to answer. The colonial authority would want to study Zephyra, to understand her species and their technology. He wasn't sure she would survive that kind of attention. Zephyra had grown stronger each day, not just physically, but emotionally. The haunted look in her eyes was fading, replaced by the curiosity and wonder that her people had tried to suppress. She explored every corner of the mining station with childlike fascination, marveling at human technology and asking endless questions about how things worked. "This makes light without fire," she observed, examining a standard LED panel with intense interest. Her understanding of physics was sophisticated, but her people's technology was based on entirely different principles. Very clever, humans think different than Etherians. Jake found himself seeing his own world through her eyes. Things he had taken for granted, ordinary human innovations and social concepts, became fascinating when viewed from an alien perspective. She was particularly intrigued by human entertainment, spending hours listening to music files on Jake's personal device. "Your species makes sounds for ... pleasure?" she asked, her head tilted in that way that Jake had come to recognize as deep thinking. "Not for communication or warning, but for feeling?" "That's right," Jake said, watching her face as a gentle classical piece played. "Music helps us express emotions, or sometimes just makes us feel good." To his amazement, tears began forming. In her eyes, the salt water looking like liquid diamonds against her pale skin. "It is ... beautiful," she whispered. "Like home should feel, but never did." The raw emotion in her voice made Jake's chest tighten. He reached out and wiped away her tears, the simple gesture seeming to surprise them both with its intimacy. Moment was interrupted by the harsh beep of the communication array coming back online. Jake's heart sank as automated status reports began flooding in, and he knew it was only a matter of time before someone noticed his station's unusual power consumption and life support readings. "Zephyra," he said urgently, "my people will want to meet you soon. Some of them are good, like I hope I am. But others might want to study you, keep you in a laboratory." He saw fear flicker in her eyes and quickly continued, "I won't let that happen, but we need to decide what you want to do." She was quiet for a long time, staring out at the alien landscape through the reinforced window. "My people will not take me back," she said finally. "I am dead to them already. But if your people are dangerous to me..." Jake made a decision that would change both their lives forever. "Then we don't tell them you're here. Not yet. Not until we know who we can trust." The implications of hiding an alien from the colonial authority were staggering, but Jake found he didn't care. Some things were more important than regulations. Over the following days, they worked together to create a hidden shelter in the abandoned mine shafts beneath the station. Jake used his engineering skills to set up life support and power systems, while Zephyra's knowledge of crystalline structures helped them create a space that was both functional and beautiful. Working together felt natural, as if they had been partners for years rather than days. "Why do you risk so much for me?" Zephyra asked one evening as they shared a simple meal. "Your own kind might punish you." Jake looked at her, this remarkable being who had already changed his understanding of the universe. "Because the moment I found you in that snow, you became important to me. I can't explain it better than that." The honesty of his words seemed to resonate with her, and she reached across the small table to take his hand. "In my language," she said softly, "we have a word, thalasos. It means the bond between souls that transcends flesh, species, time. I think this is what we have." Her pronunciation of the alien word was like hearing poetry spoken by starlight. When two worlds collide, the inevitable discovery came 3 weeks later, when a routine supply ship arrived earlier than scheduled. Captain Rodriguez was conducting a standard inspection when she noticed the power anomalies that Jake had tried so hard to conceal. Her years of experience made her suspicious of any deviation from normal operations. "Morrison," she said, studying her scanner readouts, "your life support systems are working overtime for a single-person station. Want to explain why you're consuming resources for 2 people?" Jake's mind raced, but he had prepared for this moment. "System malfunction in the atmospheric processors," he said calmly. "Been cycling redundant systems to maintain optimal air quality." It was a plausible lie, one that might buy him time, but Rodriguez was thorough. She insisted on inspecting the entire facility, and Jake knew it was only a matter of time before she found the hidden passages to Zephyra's shelter. His hands were shaking as he led her through the main areas of the station, desperately hoping Zephyra would stay hidden. The discovery happened in the worst possible way. Rodriguez was checking the mineshaft access when she noticed the sealed entrance that hadn't been in the original station blueprints. "What's behind here, Morrison?" Her voice carried the authority of someone used to being a maid. Before Jake could answer, they heard it, Zephyra's voice, singing softly in her own language. The melody drifted through the sealed entrance like ethereal music, unmistakably non-human. Rodriguez's eyes widened as the implications hit her. "First contact," she breathed. "Morrison, what have you done?" The confrontation that followed was tense and complicated. Jake led Rodriguez to Zephyra's hidden sanctuary, where the alien waited, with dignity and grace despite her obvious fear. Rodriguez, to her credit, approached slowly and kept her weapon holstered, though Jake could see her mind working through the massive implications of the situation. "I am Captain Elena Rodriguez, Colonial Authority," she said formally, though her voice was gentler than Jake had expected. "What is your name, and what is your species?" Zephyra looked to Jake, who nodded encouragingly. "I am called Zephyra of the Etherian people," she said, her English now fluent enough for formal introduction. "I was exiled to this world to die, but Jake Morrison chose to give me life instead." Rodriguez listened as the full story came out, the abandonment, the rescue, the weeks of hidden coexistence. Her expression shifted from suspicion to amazement to something like respect as she understood what Jake had risked for a stranger from. "The stars. Do you understand the position this puts us all in?" Rodriguez asked finally. "First contact protocols exist for good reasons. This should have been reported immediately." Jake stepped forward, placing himself protectively between Rodriguez and Zephyra. "She's not a specimen to be studied, Captain. She's a sentient being who was left to die. I couldn't let that happen. Protocols be damned." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Rodriguez could arrest Jake, take Zephyra into custody, and let the bureaucrats sort out the mess. It would be the safe, regulation-following choice. Instead, she surprised them both. "The official report will state that first contact occurred today during my routine inspection," she said carefully. "Whatever happened before that is between you, me, and the mine walls." She looked directly at Zephyra. "But understand this. Once word gets out, everything changes. There will be scientists, diplomats, politicians. Your quiet life here is over." Zephyra nodded solemnly. "I understand, but I am no longer afraid. Jake Morrison has shown me that kindness exists in the universe. If his people possess even some of that same kindness, perhaps there is hope for both our species." Rodriguez smiled, the first genuine expression she had shown since arriving. "Well then, let's make sure the right people hear about this first. Some of my colleagues are going to be very interested in meeting you, Zephyra of the Etherian people." A new dawn for two species 6 months later. Mining Station Omega-7 had been transformed into something unprecedented in human history. The first joint human-Etherian research facility. What had begun as a simple act of compassion had blossomed into the foundation for interspecies cooperation that neither race had thought possible. Zephyra had become far more than a rescued refugee. Her unique position as an exile gave her insights into both the strengths and weaknesses of Etherian society, while her time with humans had taught her to value individual worth over genetic perfection. She served as a cultural bridge, helping both species understand each other's perspectives. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. When the Etherian High Council learned that one of their exiles had not only survived, but was representing their species to another race, their initial reaction was outrage. They demanded Zephyr's immediate return for proper termination, viewing her survival as a cosmic mistake that needed correction. But humanity's response surprised even themselves. Dr. Amanda Foster, the lead xenobiologist assigned to the facility, had spent weeks learning about Etherian culture and had reached a startling conclusion. Their obsession with genetic purity is actually making them weaker as a species. She explained to the assembled diplomatic team. Zephyr represents exactly the kind of genetic diversity they need to survive. Jake had been promoted to station commander, officially in charge of the human contingent, but actually serving as Zephyr's closest advisor and friend. Their bond had deepened beyond mere friendship into something that defied classification by either species standards. They worked together seamlessly, complementing each other's strengths and covering for each other's weaknesses. The breakthrough came when Zephyr proposed a radical experiment. "Let some of your scientists visit my people," she suggested during a planning meeting. "And let some young Etherians come here to learn. Not official exchanges, but ... What is your word? Cultural immersion?" The first group of human volunteers included Dr. Foster, Captain Rodriguez, and 3 xenobiologists who had specifically requested assignment to the program. Their visit to the Etherian homeworld was initially met with suspicion and hostility, but Zephyr's careful preparations and her growing influence among the younger Etherians gradually opened doors. The humans were amazed by Etherian technology, particularly their mastery of crystalline energy systems and gravitational manipulation. But they were equally disturbed by the rigid social hierarchy and the casual way the Etherians discussed disposing of defective individuals. Dr. Foster's reports, Back to Earth, painted a picture of a species that was technologically advanced, but emotionally stunted. Meanwhile, the young Etherians who came to the human facility experienced culture shock of a different kind. They were amazed by human creativity, the concept of art for its own sake, and the value placed on individual achievement regardless of genetic background. Many of them had never heard music before, and their reactions to human compositions were profound and moving. Zephyr found herself in the unique position of being the most valued member of both communities. Her defects, by Etherian standards, her emotional depth and creative thinking, made her an ideal ambassador. Her experiences with humanity had given her insights that even the wisest Etherian elders lacked. The real victory came when the first hybrid technology emerged from the Yali. Collaboration. Jake and Zephyr, working together with both human engineers and Etherian crystal shapers, developed a new form of power generation that combined human mechanical ingenuity with Etherian energy manipulation. The resulting systems were more efficient than anything either species had created alone. "You see?" Zephyr said to a group of visiting Etherian officials, demonstrating the hybrid technology. "When different kinds of thinking work together, we create something neither could achieve alone. This is why diversity makes us stronger." On a personal level, Jake and Zephyr had created something equally unprecedented, a relationship that transcended species boundaries. They had developed their own language of communication that blended human words with Etherian melody, creating conversations that sounded like poetry set to music. As Jake stood on the observation deck, watching human and Etherian researchers work side by side in the facility below, he reflected on how a simple act of kindness had changed the course of history for 2 species. Zephyr joined him, as she often did during his evening contemplations. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked, following his gaze to the bustling activity below. "Saving me that night? Your life would have been simpler without all this complexity." Jake turned to look at her, this remarkable being who had taught him that the universe was far more wonderful and strange than he had ever imagined. "Never," he said firmly. "Finding you in that snow was the best thing that ever happened to me. To humanity, really." Zephyr smiled, an expression that had become more frequent and more radiant over the months. My people have a saying, from the deepest cold comes the brightest warmth. I never understood it until I met you. She took his hand, her skin now comfortably warm instead of the dangerous ice cold of that first night. Together, they watched as human and Etherian children played together in the facility's recreation area, creating games that neither species had imagined before. The future was uncertain, full of challenges and difficulties yet to be overcome. But it was also bright with possibilities that neither race could have achieved alone, not in the end. Jake Morrison's decision to offer warmth to a dying alien in the snow had proven that sometimes the most important moments in history begin with the simplest acts of kindness. And as the stars shone down on the transformed mining station, two species moved forward together into a future that promised to be extraordinary.